These streamers really thought they were gonna bust through the industry like the Kool-Aid man, but instead they came in like a mouse chewing through the wall. They really have no idea what they're doing, even though some of them are kind of decent. But for the most part, they had a formula for success in that Netflix had like a 10-year jump on these guys. Netflix basically laid out the formula, like the game plan for these guys to follow, and they couldn't do it. Well, at least they're not currently doing it for the most part. In some areas they are kind of succeeding, but not really. And I'm gonna talk about 3 areas in which they're failing. Because to me, for the most part, they do kind of suck, especially for the prices that they're charging, especially you, Max. I'm looking at you. All right, but first, before we get into the 3 things that I'm gonna talk about what these streamers could be improving on, let me introduce myself. I'm Banteria. I like to talk about anything and everything related to pop culture. I'm not an expert in any of these things. I'm just expressing my thoughts and my viewpoints. Fair warning, I don't heavily edit these videos. I just hope that whatever pops into my head and comes out to you in the camera is engaging and thoughtful and thought-provoking, hopefully. That's at least what I'm aiming for. All right, so let's get into the 3 things. So the first thing is the content strategy. When the streamers first came out, Disney, especially Max and Disney Plus, they came out swinging. They like basically put their proverbial swang on the table and tried to be like, hey, we're here now. But it didn't really work. Now they're here and they basically overspent, and now they're cutting a bunch of shows, especially HBO Max. Like they just kind of went ham on their cost-cutting procedures. And we're basically at a point where they almost release very infrequently. You don't know what you're gonna get. Although I do see stuff posted on there constantly. It's nothing that's crazy or like that you're always looking forward to. You really don't know what you're gonna get with that service. Disney Plus is the same thing. They've cut back a lot of things, but you kind of know more or less a roadmap. But here's the problem is they came out, they released all this content. They were like, we're gonna release shows left and right. The problem with that is that Netflix is doing that currently. But Netflix had years, like I said, at least 10 years on these streaming services in order to get to that point. They're trying to copy a middle stage Netflix, and Netflix itself is kind of almost past that point as well, where they kind of even slow down a little bit. And really what these streaming services should have done is followed an early stage Netflix in where they try to release a strong library of content, and they slowly do it, and they do it methodically so that they have that goodwill with the customer. The problem with these streamers is they were releasing these good and bad shows, and it just made their services look bad. Whereas Netflix can do that. They can release multiple shows, multiple movies. 50% of it might be good, 50% of it might be bad, but you have that 10 years of goodwill in which Netflix had built up with the customer, and we were able to put up with, or we were willing to put up with it and stay with the service while they tried to figure this stuff out. HBO Max, Disney Plus, and all these other streamers don't have that goodwill. As a consumer, we don't have the attention span or the wallet span to put up with them while they try to figure this stuff out. It's like, wait, you want me to cough out $16 a month while you try to figure out what's good and what's bad, or what your content release strategy is, more or less? It just kind of felt like they were throwing everything at us plus the kitchen sink, and it was kind of ridiculous. And then you want to talk about increasing the price of your services after having only been out a few years, and you're kind of releasing stuff that's hit or miss. But that's not the only thing that these services were kind of missing the mark on. And it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about, especially when they review these basically tech products, because these are tech products, they're apps, right? And that's the app itself, the product itself, the tech itself. No one talks about this, but when these services first released, they weren't gonna be perfect. They weren't gonna have app functionality that you see in Netflix nowadays. Even Netflix, when it first came out, was a little bit clunky. It didn't work perfect, but it was functional and it was good. And I'm not saying that these apps came out and they were completely bombs, although Disney Plus had that problem on the first week where sometimes the service wouldn't let you log in. HBO Max ended up having the same issue for the first couple of days after its release. But even years later, when you look at the apps themselves now, it's just kind of crazy to think about some of the issues the apps themselves have whenever you're on them, whether you're on the TV, the tablet, or your telephone. One of the issues that these apps have is their algorithm and the way that they push content to you. Netflix will cater things to you and what you like. You can tell that the algorithm is working. And the same thing goes for YouTube. You can spot those things. You may not notice that you're spotting them or that you're noticing it, but you notice it. When you go on HBO Max or Peacock or Disney Plus, it just kind of feels like they're throwing everything at you that they got. It doesn't matter if you're interested in this show or this movie. Hey, this on Peacock, hey, this movie was in theaters. Here it is for free, not for free, but here it is on our service for you to watch. And it kind of feels cheap. It's like, wait, hold up. Like, am I even really interested in this? Do I really want to watch this? So you can spot it. It's just little things that you can tell where the algorithm is not really catering toward you. And I feel like that's something that should be big. It's like something that makes Netflix feel unique. And Prime Video is probably the worst culprit of this, because as soon as you hop in there, you're noticing multiple things getting pushed at you that you have to buy on top of Prime. It just kind of feels annoying. Netflix, like I said, Netflix, you go on and it just feels seamless. It feels like that, like you're there. It's there for you to service you, and these other services are just kind of missing that mark for the most part. Another thing is that the in-app experience and the way that they feel. Max, for instance, just feels bland. Like, it's so boring to explore and go on there and try to find something to watch. I don't care to look through their stuff. Peacock is over cluttered, like they're trying to oversell you. It feels cheap in that regard. And then Disney Plus it's kind of okay. Like it's not good, it's not bad, but that's a problem. The only one that differentiates itself and is trying to go beyond Netflix is Prime Video. And I feel like Prime Video probably for the most part doesn't account for most of these three things in which they're having issues. I feel like Prime Video is at least trying to compete with Netflix in regards to the actual app and content and stuff like that. They're kind of more up there, in my opinion, in regards to being an actual competitor to Netflix. Their actual in-app functionality and all the stuff that they got going on, Thursday Night Football and the way that they break down the plays and the teams, all that stuff is cool. Like that stuff. It feels good. Like their play button, like I want to click on their play button whenever I go into a show or a movie. Like it just looks like oh, I want to hit that. These other services though, it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is an app product, this is a tech product, and you guys are just like laying out a template for us to look at, and you have zero care about how it comes across to the end user. But instead, most people focus on something else, which is the library of content or the streaming service exclusivity, which is another issue, the third issue that we're going to get into that these streamers have and why they suck. And that is the fact this specifically more applies toward HBO Max, but it can apply to Peacock. And I know that HBO Max is called Max now, but it's a habit that I keep calling it HBO Max. It was ingrained in me from when the service first came out. This last point and the exclusivity, or the fact that these apps keep allowing their other shows to pop up on other services, mainly applies to Max, but it can apply to Peacock and some of these other services. But if you're gonna allow like your HBO shows or some of your flagship shows such as The Office to kind of come in and out on Netflix and pop up there every once in a while and allow end users to experience it on another streaming services, you're diminishing the quality in the eyes of the user of your streaming service. Because if I can go and get the experience that you are trying to sell me on HBO Max on Netflix, I'm gonna go on Netflix because of point number 2 that I just said. The functionality there is just much better. It's more smoother. I like being there. I like looking at things. Not to mention the fact, and this is a big point that I feel like these streamers, like it just blows my mind that these streamers are not doing. And it kind of goes back to number 2, but it kind of applies to number 3 as well. And really, I should have mentioned it in number 2. The fact that most of these streamers aren't showing you clips of these shows, especially of their exclusive stuff. It's crazy to think that these streamers are not like making that a priority, because 90% of the reason why I watch anything on Netflix most of the time is because that clip pops up. When you hover over that show or that movie and that clip pops up and they show you something interesting, like I'm sold and I'm like clicking on it. Next thing I know, I'm watching it without even really thinking about it. These streamers don't do that. If I hop on the HBO Max and I don't see anything I like, I'm out of there. But that could be the case for Netflix if they didn't show me clips. Part of what keeps me there is I start watching a clip and I'm like, oh damn, like should I watch this? And even if I don't end up watching that, I'm so like interested in having had seen that clip. I'm like, hey, let me see if I can find something that has a better clip, that maybe there's something more interesting that I could watch. And then I end up staying, and I stay on the platform longer. Like I don't know how you don't do market research and that's not something that pops up in there. Like you would think that these other streamers would be like, damn, like we need to lock this down and get this going. Most of the other stuff might not even be an issue if you had that. Like that should be your number one priority, which is just crazy. But going back to my exclusivity points, you shouldn't have these shows hopping around, because if you're, like I said, if you're gonna have them hop around, I'm just gonna go watch it on the streaming service that's better. Why am I gonna go watch it here when you're gonna eventually put it on something else? It's the same problem that theaters are having right now, because most of these movies come out within 3 months on a streaming service. Why am I gonna go pay extra money to go watch it somewhere else when I can just watch it on this streaming service? The same thing applies to your TV shows on your platform. If you don't trust your platform and you don't trust that stuff to stay there, then why should I stay there? Overall, in conclusion, like I said, these apps, I mean, they don't completely suck. Like I'm not saying I hate them or that you shouldn't pay for them. They have some good content and they have some good things. At least show me you're trying. Whereas like HBO Max, for instance, it's like, why do you even exist sometimes? But my overall point is that these guys suck in these three areas, and it doesn't even make sense how you're completely missing the mark when it's like some of the premier stuff of what makes Netflix so special. And you would think that they would do their market research and be like, hey, we need to copy this. Instead, what they did is they were like, let's copy Netflix's content strategy and just release anything and everything and spend billions of dollars on TV shows and movies, only for you guys to end up cutting the cost anyways. You guys didn't understand what made it special, in that, like I said, first, it's an app or it's a tech product. So you need to focus on making it more functional and make the exploration better and make sure your algorithm is pushing content that we all want to see to us. And then also too, making sure that you're showing clips of that content, because that's what actually sells the videos and the movies that are on there. And then making sure that your stuff is exclusive. And then building up that goodwill and that strong library of content. If you have that goodwill, then I'll forgive you when you produce something that's kind of crap. But if you don't want to take the time and the energy to do that for me, then I'm not going to do that for you.